In the last couple of years, we have really been blessed as Linux users to have all these new universal package formats, things like snap packs, flat packs, app images, because they make our life a lot easier. It's now much easier to get all of your favorite software installed on whatever Linux distro you happen to run. Today I'm going to talk about one of those universal package formats, snap packages. Snap packages were created by Canonical, the company behind Ubuntu. Snap packages, of course, are baked into Ubuntu. It's got built-in snap support. Because of that, snap packages are receiving widespread and very fast adoption because Ubuntu is a very popular Linux distribution. Also, there are hundreds of Linux distributions that base off of Ubuntu, so the vast majority of those also have snap support baked in. Many large companies have started adopting the snap package formats. Companies like Google, Microsoft, Spotify, just to name a few examples. Canonical reports that they have now have more than 4,000 snap packages available on the Snap Store, and that they receive more than 100,000 snap installs per day from the Snap Store. So again, it's receiving very widespread, fast adoption. So what are snap packages? Explain it to me like I'm 5. That's what we're going to do today. So what do you need to get started with snap packages? Well, if you're on Ubuntu or one of the many Ubuntu-based Linux distributions out there, again, Snap's already enabled by default, probably. Many non-Ubuntu Linux distributions are shipping now with Snap Pack enabled by default. But if you happen to be running a distribution that ships without snap support baked in, it's really easy to get going. All you need is a terminal, and you need the ability to paste a couple of commands in the terminal. Really easy commands too. So today I'm running Arco Linux on my main production machine here. I recently installed Arco on my new machine here that I got a couple of weeks ago. Arco is a Arch Linux-based distribution. It does not ship with snap support enabled by default. Now, you need to check and see if your distro ships with snap support enabled by default. So you need to see if there is a program on your system called snapd. How would you go about doing this? Well, at the command line, you could do a simple where is, all one word, space, snapd. And if snapd is there, you will get the location of snapd on your machine, /user/lib/snapd. So I've already got it on my machine because I installed it, but originally it wasn't installed. How do you go about installing it? Well, if you're on a Debian or an Ubuntu-based distribution, a simple sudo apt install snapd will get you snapd installed. That's the daemon that's required to be on the system to use snap packs. If you're on an Arch-based Linux distribution like I am today, snapd is not in the standard Arch repos. It is, though, in the AUR, the Arch user repository. So I use yay, which is a AUR helper. So yay space --S snapd gets me snapd installed here on Arco Linux, which is what I'm running today. So is that it? A simple sudo apt install snapd, or in my case, yay -s snapd to install snapd, and I'm done? Well, almost. There is a couple of other things you should do at this point. You do need to enable a service with systemd, assuming you're running a Linux distribution with the systemd init system. Most Linux distributions out there do use systemd these days. So you need to run the following command: sudo systemctl enable --now snapd.socket. That enables the snapd service. So just hit enter, and it's going to ask you for your root password. Give it the password. One other command you would then need to add is you need to create this symbolic link. So sudo ln-s for link symbolic, and then it basically creates a symbolic link from /var/lib/snapd/snap to just /snap. Run that, and now let's cd into the root directory to make sure that symbolic link we created is actually there. If I cd into root and then do a ls, you will see I now have snap right there as a symbolic link. Snap is actually really var lib snapd snap. Hope that makes sense. So now we're ready to install snap packages. Just those 3 commands and we're ready to go. So let me clear the screen here. And let's do a test run. Just to make sure snaps are working, let's install something really small just as a test. So there is actually a test snap package that is perfect for this. Sudo snap install hello-world. That is the format to install packages with snaps. Sudo snap install name of package. Hit enter. And it is fetching hello world. The install is very quick. It is a very tiny program. Let's run it. Hello-world. And if you get this output in the terminal, hello world exclamation point, you're good. Snaps are working. I do not need this package installed anymore, so I'm going to sudo snap remove hello world, and it removes hello world. So sudo snap install name of program to install, sudo snap remove name of program to uninstall. If you want to check the snap version, you could snap space version, and you will see snap version is 2.38, snapd 2.38. How do you update all the snaps on your system? Well, here's the great thing about snap packages. They automatically update on your machine. I think they're set to check for updates 4 times a day. I think that's how it's built in, but you can change the intervals when it checks for updates. You can also just check for updates when you want to. You can do manual updates with sudo snap refresh, and that will manually check for updates for all the snaps on my system. I have about 5 or 6, I think, installed on my system. Nothing to update. If I didn't want to update all the snaps manually, maybe I just had one snap pack that I really needed to update to the latest version, I could sudo snap refresh name of program. I think VLC's on the system, so I could check if there's an update for VLC. Yeah, VLC has no updates available. Before I continue, I should mention that if you want to dive deeper into like the time intervals for updates and configuring all of that, there is really good documentation over at the Snap Store. So if I go back to snapcraft.io, other than the store, the Snap Store, you do have really good docs here. Documentation such as this page here, keeping snaps up to date, and it explains everything you can do with like setting different interval rates for automatically updating your system. They give an example command here, snap set system refresh time, and it looks like it's setting the refresh time to happen only between the hours of 4 to 7 a.m. and 7 to 10 o'clock in the evening. So you can really fine tune the update times. Also, if your Linux distribution does not ship with snaps enabled by default, you can find documentation on how to install snaps on whatever Linux distribution you happen to be running. For example, if I do arch install, search for arch install here at the Snap Store, I get installing snaps on Arch Linux as the first result. Installing snap on Arch Linux. It basically covers everything that I covered with you guys just a second ago in the terminal. So let's go back into the terminal. Where are snaps installed on your system? People often ask this when they first get into snaps, is where are the actual snap packages located on your system? Well, let me cd, and I'm going to cd into /var/lib/snapd/snap. And if I do an ls, you will see all my snaps are there. I have bin, which is the binary directory there. That's where all the binaries for my snap packages live. But then I have the actual folders for each snap that I've installed. Core, Nextcloud, SyncThing, VLC, and Zonotic. Now, remember, we created that symbolic link. When we installed snapd, you remember creating the symbolic link to /snap? So, if instead I cd into root /snap, right? Now, do an ls. Look, it is the same thing because we have a symbolic link between var lib snapd snap and just /snap. So it's a little easier typing to just use /snap as the path if you want to check out the snaps that are installed on your system. We should discuss snap package size, the actual installed disk size. A lot of people are confused about this because you can get some bad readings in your typical file manager, for example, your graphical file manager. For example, if I did a quick du disk usage space dash, we'll give it the HS flags and VLC. Let's check the size of VLC here. VLC, this folder here, is taking up 796 megs. Wow, that's kind of large for VLC. VLC normally doesn't take that much disk space. What is going on with the snap pack? Well, this is not a real accurate representation of that snap. Remember, snap packages, when you install snaps, every snap pack is mounted on your system. So if I do a mount and then grep VLC, you will see that var lib snapd snaps underscore VLC dot snap is mounted on the system. If I, did a ls blk, for example, you will see every snap I've installed, Xenodic, Core, VLC, SyncThing, Nextcloud, they are all mounted. So that is, you got to keep that in mind. But the actual snap pack itself, and these are files that end in .snap, if you check those out, they are actually not that big. So if I cd into /var/lib/snapd/snaps with an s, let me do an ls in that directory, you will see the actual snap packages. You see the files end in .snap. That is the highly compressed snap pack. That is the actual snap pack. That is not the mount point that some file managers show, and they show the size being rather large, but the actual size of these is not very big at all. So if I did a du space dash hs again, and this time do for VLC underscore 770 snap, the actual snap pack, it's only 203 megabytes. That's a better representation of the size of these snaps. So don't get worried about the reported disk size, the file size in your file managers. Sometimes they report the mount point size, and that is not really what's going on. We should talk about confinement levels. I mentioned that snaps are a compressed package. They're really a container. Snap packages are a containerized package format, meaning those .snaps, they are self-contained. They have all the dependencies for that program installed. So when I do the snap package for VLC, VLC has a lot of dependencies, but they're all included in that snap pack. Also, because these packages are in a container, they are completely isolated from the rest of your system for security reasons. So snaps have 3 different confinement levels. You have your basic strict level confinement, which is what the vast majority of snap packages use, is strict confinement, meaning these snaps, they run in complete isolation from the rest of your machine. They can't access your files, your network, any processes running on your system. They can't access anything outside of their container. They live in their own containerized world, and that's what they're restricted to. Now, in some older versions of Snap, you had this classic confinement level. It still exists, but they really don't like people to use classic confinement because a classic snap allows access to your system's resources in much the same way as if I installed VLC, for example. If I installed VLC with Pacman on Arch or apt in Debian or Ubuntu, VLC has access to all the files on my machine, any of the processes going on in my machine. That's the same with classic snaps. For security reasons, they don't like doing classic snaps over at the Snap store. You have to request permission to get a classic snap listed on the Snap store, and they may or may not approve it when you ask them that. But there is such a thing as a classic confinement level. And there's also def mode confinement level. That's strictly for Snap creators and developers. If you want to read more about that, again, check out the Snapcraft documentation. How do you find out the confinement level of a particular application? Well, there is a command for that. So you could do something like snap info, and then give it this flag, -- verbose, and then name of program. Let's do VLC again. And somewhere in this information, you will find confinement, strict. So it is your standard strict confinement level. You can also check out log files with snaps. So I have Nextcloud on my system, Nextcloud installed as a snap. So I could check out the logs with sudo snap logs and then Nextcloud. And it's, of course, it's going to ask for root password. And there's some of the logs. All right, so that log information. Now Nextcloud comes with its own LAMP stack installed. So the Nextcloud snap installs the Apache server, MySQL, all the dependencies for Nextcloud are in the Nextcloud snap. So I could also sudo snap logs nextcloud.apache, for example, to get the Apache logs. Or sudo snap logs nextcloud.mysql to get the MySQL logs. If you want to explore some configuration options with a snap that you have installed, you can use sudo snap git name of program. How about Nextcloud? Nextcloud, because I know it has some configuration options because of all the LAMP stack and stuff that's installed. So if I do sudo snap git Nextcloud, you see I have various configuration options. If I want to dive into this a little deeper, I could sudo snap git Nextcloud ports, for example, since ports was an option here. And you see I get a little more information about ports. If I want to check connections with snap packages, for example, VLC uses a lot of your audio and video connections on the system. So if I did a, snap connections VLC, it should tell me all the connections, camera, desktop legacy, mount, network, etc., pulse audio. You can also enable and disable snap packages. For example, say I have VLC installed as a snap pack, but for some reason I want to disable it. I don't want VLC to actually be enabled on the system. I can do a sudo snap disable VLC. And VLC is now disabled. So if I actually tried to run VLC command not found, I could, of course, go back and enable it. So sudo snap enable VLC. VLC enabled, and now VLC launches just fine. So that was a very brief overview of the snap package format. I use snap packs, I use flat packs, I use app images, all three on my system. I like all three formats. For some reason, some people seem to think that you can only use one of these universal package formats, that you can't use all three. These are not really competing formats. Snaps, flat packs, and app images really aren't the same thing, and it's okay to install all three on your system. There's really no downside to it. So I use all three: snaps, flat packs, app images. The snap package format has always worked for me. It makes a lot of things really easy. For example, the fact that everything is in its own container really makes a lot of stuff, especially server stuff, dead simple. Installing a Nextcloud instance, for example, is super simple. Sudo snap install Nextcloud installs Nextcloud, Apache, MySQL. It sets up the LAMP stack for you. It's like a 5-minute and you're done kind of job. We're actually setting up a proper LAMP stack if you had to do that just to get a Nextcloud instance up and working. It's kind of tedious. Snap packages were originally designed as a package format mainly for servers, for the cloud, and for IoT devices especially, but increasingly we're seeing a lot more use on the desktop. Ubuntu, for example, the latest versions of Ubuntu, increasingly more and more packages that are installed by default on Ubuntu are installed as snap packages. Some people have issues with that because I guess sometimes when you open snap packages, they take a little longer to launch than if they were not installed as a snap. Maybe because everything has to be mounted, maybe that's slowing it down somewhat. I haven't noticed snaps on my Arch-based Linux distributions ever really slowing down or taking a long time to launch. When I used Manjaro on my previous machine, I used it for a year, had a ton of snaps installed. None of them were ever slow to launch. Here on Arco, I haven't noticed any snaps that I've already got installed slow to launch. It seems to be mainly an Ubuntu problem. Like when I do check out some of the recent Ubuntu editions, I do notice that certain snap packs installed on those Ubuntu distros do take a while to launch. Things like the System Monitor, for example, that's one that just comes to my mind right away. Sometimes that very first time you launch it, it does take a minute to launch. And it would be annoying if that happened all the time, but I think it's really just that first time you launch it. I think after that, it should straighten itself out. Overall, my opinion of snap packs is they're great. I love them. They provide a easy way to get software installed on every Linux distribution because they're distro agnostic. These are not just for Ubuntu. Even though Canonical created snap packages, you can use snap packages on any Linux distribution. It really makes it easy to get third-party proprietary software installed because by default, most Linux distributions are only going to have free software in their repositories, their official repositories. So if you want to install something that is not free and open source, something like Spotify or Discord or something like that, you know what? You need to go find some other package format, something like Snap, to install programs like that. And I think that is a really nice option to have. It makes it a lot easier to go get that software because back in the old days, if it wasn't in your official repository, then you had to maybe build it from source. Nobody likes building stuff from source. Or you had to go get a PPA in Ubuntu or go find it in the AUR in Arch. And those can be scary to use too because anybody can put a package in the AUR or create their own PPA. Do you really trust that? Having snap packages, because it's a curated store over on Snapcraft, those packages have been checked. They should be safe for use. So overall, I think snap packages really are fantastic, and I think the Linux world would be a dimmer place without snaps. Of course, I almost forgot. This show was made possible by Ansem, Carlos, Chris, Douglas, Dylan, Leor, Rob, Robert, and Tony. They are the producers of the show. Without them, this show wouldn't be possible. Also brought to you by all those fine ladies and gentlemen, all those names you see on the screen that help make this show possible. They help support me over on Patreon. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider doing so. You'll find me at DistroTube over on Patreon. Let's do that outro one more time.